Kia kara kia tātou, whakataka te hau ki te uru, whakataka te hau ki te tonga, kia mā kina ki uta, ki mā taratara ki tai. E hi aki ana, te atakura, he tio, he huka, he hauhu, tihei mauri ora. I was going to say morena, but it's definitely not the morning. Kia ora everyone, and thank you for coming to the Policy and Planning and Development Committee Extraordinary Meeting. Obviously this is our final committee, hopefully, for the term, so just want to acknowledge everyone's massive year and also Merry Christmas and have a safe New Year, and definitely see you all back bright and early next year for a massive year. I do want to acknowledge and welcome Karen Wilson, a member of Haukura. She has been a member of Haukura, well, before it was called the Independent Māori Statutory Board. Very excited to have Karen back. Karen is from Te Akatai Waiohua, and she doesn't want to introduce herself at this time, but I'm sure if you do not know her, you will get to know her well, and if you know her well, you will know that she's got a, I was going to say a long history, but I won't say long, but you know, Karen is well versed of issues right across Auckland and has been involved with Auckland Council for quite some time, so just want to acknowledge you, and also acknowledge further in the apologies that Ngāti Mublea will be the other member of Haukura on this committee. He cannot make it today. So we'll move to the apologies. It is just Member Blair. Cool, thank you. Can I have a mover for that, Deputy Chair? And Councillor Sayers, so Julie and Greg. All those in favour? Aye. Any opposed? No. Thank you. Next up, we have attendance by electronic link. Now, I can't see him online, but Councillor Williamson originally put forward an apology for today's meeting, then yesterday decided to ask for a link so he could come in from from overseas, and technically under the standing orders that it's not, I've taken advice from a bazillion people, technically the standing orders, and we did discuss this in the workshop and the meeting, that the new standing orders do not allow you to come on online unless you are unwell in an emergency, or if you can't be physically present, but only for council business. I don't want to create a precedent of allowing Councillor Williamson today, but I will because, and this is my get out of jail free card, this is an extraordinary meeting, and I feel like an extraordinary meeting does have some different caveats that come with it. It's, you know, in our diaries late, all that sort of thing. So if people have issues with that, we will need to discuss it next term. I did ask these questions through the standing orders discussion because I think there is some confusion still about their requirement. So my understanding of this requirement is if you're coming online, it has to be part of those reasons. And I know that Councillor Williamson is a non-council business. So, but I will accept him and he will arrive where he's been sent the link. So he might, I know the time difference is pretty considerably different where he is. So he may or may not come online, but we've sent him the link. I don't need to move that now. Are there any declarations of interest? Nope. There are no items not on the agenda or extraordinary, so we'll move straight to the report. So we'll have Justine, Ben and Ben. Kia ora. Oh, and just saying, or just flag, you would have seen I sent some recommendations, chair's recommendations that myself and Julie in the Mayor's office and others had worked on last week with staff. We then condensed them slightly yesterday and sent them out to everyone. So everyone should have those in their emails, but if you'd like a printed copy, the staff can get a printed copy for you. But yes, so I'll move in, Councillor Ferrier is keen to second, and those are on, and then we'll go to the presentation. So kia ora, Justine.
Kia ora koutou, ko Justine Haves Tokaunga, ko General Manager Waste Solutions Ahau. I'm joined today by Ben Barton, Waste Planning Manager, and Ben Brooks, Senior Policy Manager. Thank you very much for your time today, and acknowledging the Chair's comments just now regarding Chair's recommendations. I will just provide a brief presentation for you in support of the staff report, and we welcome any partai at the end. So the Waste Minimisation and Management Plan details how Auckland Council will promote and achieve waste minimisation to meet our obligations under the Waste Minimisation Act 2008. The Act requires that we review our plan every 6 years. This graphic shows we've had 3 plans since 2012. Across all 3 of our plans, we have adopted the aspirational goal for Auckland to be zero waste by 2040. The proposal to move to fortnightly rubbish collections has also been a key feature of our waste plans since 2012. Prior steps taken in support of fortnightly readiness include the introduction of the food scrap service in 2023 and the move to standardisation of rubbish services completed in September this year. Bin audits have identified the potential diversion of a significant portion of rubbish to recycling or food scraps. Fortnightly would help us maximise value from these services and reduce volumes to landfill in line with our 2024 waste plan. To track progress towards our goal, the waste plan includes targets for total waste, curbside waste, and council waste, that is, our in-house waste that we generate as a council from our own activities. The current plan includes a curbside target of 29% by 2030, with the transition to fortnightly collections as the priority action to achieve this target. Although curbside domestic waste only accounts for a portion of Auckland's total waste stream, because of Auckland's size, we actually collect rubbish, recycling and food scraps from almost 1/3 of the nation's households. The evidence, as per attachment A of the report, supports a fortnightly rubbish service for the following reasons. Recent experience from other New Zealand territorial authorities that have moved to fortnightly collections indicates that up to 50% reduction in curbside rubbish is possible. This is largely because it increases use of recycling and food scraps bins with associated emissions reduction benefits, particularly from organic waste being diverted from landfill. Reduced costs associated with collection, haulage and disposal are anticipated because our services run on a cost recovery basis, meaning savings are directly passed on to the ratepayer. Fewer trucks and fewer bins on the curb would also mean amenity improvements for Auckland. Many cities in New Zealand and overseas already have fortnightly rubbish collections, including the 18 New Zealand councils you can see represented on this slide. For example, Hamilton City Council made the switch in 2020, alongside the introduction of food scraps collections and improvements to their recycling service, with households cutting their rubbish by around 50%. Tauranga City Council introduced the same system in 2021 and has seen similar results. Neither reported an associated increase in illegal dumping. So we recently consulted with affected residents, ratepayers and any other interested Aucklanders from the 13th to the 31st of October. And through that consultation, we received just over 5,000 responses from those living in the trial areas as well as people living outside the trial areas. Submitters who responded to the main consultation question were largely opposed to the trial. Of those that responded, 78% of submitters opposed the trial, 4% were unsure, and 18% supported it. The concerns we heard, which are shown on the slide here, too much waste, health and hygiene, illegal dumping, and concern for large households, are consistent with themes of previous consultations, and the proposed trial design is intended to address and mitigate these concerns. The proposed design supports trial participants and seeks to mitigate concerns in a number of ways. We would work with households that may need extra bin capacity during the trial and ensure they have options available at no additional cost. This image in the middle of the slide gives an idea of the range of options available, and an additional rubbish bin for those who really need it would also be an addition. Households that produce very little waste and can cope with less can choose a smaller 80-litre rubbish bin and pay a lower targeted rate. The trial would also enable us to test incentives for households that only put out their small rubbish bin once a month or less during the trial. Ratepayers would also receive a one-off rates remission applied to the final rates instalment for the current financial year. The amount of the remission would be based on household rubbish bin size when the trial starts. The staff recommendation is to proceed with the proposed trial for the following reasons. It provides a pathway to reduce curbside waste to landfill and meet our adopted targets. It tests how we could best make it work in Tamaki Makaurau for residents and ratepayers, council and our waste contractors. It enables real-world data and insights into a fortnightly service and how we could adjust it based on the trial outcomes. And it helps inform elected member considerations before making any decisions on any more permanent or wider service change. The key impacts of not proceeding with the trial that we are highlighting for the committee's consideration are that we are unlikely to meet our adopted curbside waste reduction targets with no alternative approved pathway to reduce this waste stream. We will forgo the opportunity to gather insights and understanding of a fortnightly service in the Auckland context. Acknowledging the Chair's recommendations to not proceed with the trial, we suggest further advice is developed for committee consideration on alternative options to achieve the curbside waste target. Thank you for your time. We welcome any pātai.
Kia ora. Thank you, Justine, and the team. I know there's constantly a huge amount of work that's done, not just on this part of the policy, but across the waste system. And I know that probably seeing the Chair's recs, there'll be many of the team who are slightly concerned or upset because of the passion behind the zero waste and also, the evidence behind it. But we'll talk more about the Chair's rec soon. Are there questions? Oh, Councillor Newman.
Hi Justine, thank you very much. I've got a series of questions, so if there are others that want to, and if I'm taking too much time, Chair, I'd maybe like to come back. All right, my first question, if the will of the committee today is that it doesn't support the trial and it wishes to affirm a weekly rubbish collection service for Auckland households, there needs to be a consequential adjustment to the waste minimisation and management plan to reflect that. I'm just reading pages 86 and 87 of the plan, and there's a lot of preamble to that as well. I want to give political direction to that. Can you tell me the mechanism for me to be able to do that for you? Because I'm assuming that, well, I believe that if we don't agree the curbside recycling trial today, we need to ensure consistency with the political direction, which is to amend the plan. So can you tell me how you will take that up and ensure that we are making the consequential amendment to the plan, 2024 plan?
Thanks for the pātai and through the Chair. The advice that we recommend bringing back to committee next year will include options for achieving or coming as close as we can to the curbside waste target, and those various options will need an assessment of how the plan may or may not need to be amended. So we will need to provide that advice as part of our next advice to committee.
Okay, can that advice, how does that advice sort of, how do we ensure that you are receiving and adhering to a political expectation that this committee of the whole has voted to oppose the trial and supports a weekly service? Well, my support a weekly service, for example, but I know you're talking about coming back with options, but I want you to come back with the track changes to amend it.
So my understanding is we can't bring that advice back to committee with proposed amendments to the plan. We need you to consider options to achieve the target, and those options may require the plan to be amended.
Would that plan be able to be amended without further consultation, noting that we submitted on, we provided a consultation process for Aucklanders in 2024, and in 2024, 53% of submitters at the time opposed the transition to fortnightly, and now we've got 78% of Auckland submitters opposed to a fortnightly trial. So for those of us and for those Aucklanders who are indicating their preference for the weekly collection option, how do we achieve that outcome? I sort of feel like we've been asked and we've talked about this and talked about this and talked about it. So now can we get to the delivery of that outcome?
Yes, so thank you. Katie Bexley's just joined us to answer this question from a legal perspective. Thanks, Katie.
Thank you. Through the chair. So just to confirm that any change or any amendment to the waste plan would require consultation through the SCP, and it also requires the council, whenever the council is looking to amend its plan, it has to consider particular matters that are set out in the Waste Minimisation Act, and it would require a full consultation process using the SCP. And just to confirm, so Justine's advice around coming back to the committee with options, those options will necessarily look at whether any amendment to the plan is needed or recommended, and then it would be for the committee to decide which option it wants to go with, and then it would, look at what an amendment to the plan would look like and follow the process required for a special consultative procedure if it went down that track.
Can I do a follow-up, Chair? Katie, the trial option was a hybrid, it was a compromise. It wasn't what we had initially consulted on. What we had consulted on was a series of outcomes, and in the consultation in 2024, we included the weekly fortnightly question, for which we got 53% of submitters opposed the move to fortnightly, 37% supported the move to fortnightly. So we actually have quite a strong degree of public support through a consultation process that we agreed and had have your says that supported weekly and opposed fortnightly. Is that consultation for the purpose of a consequential amendment voided now and we have to start again? Because that would be disappointing.
So the consultation that was undertaken previously, when you made the decision in 2024, that was taking into account the consultation feedback at that time. So now if the committee wanted to make a different decision, then it would need to go through a new consultation process.
Kia ora, Councillor. I'll go to others and come back. Councillor Filipaina.
Tēnā koe hea mana. To our kaimahi, to our staff. So look, 2024 consultation, how far did we go and who did we consult with in 2024?
With Aucklanders. So it was, the WMMP was consulted widely.
And just confirm the numbers we went out. So that was 53% came back, saying, hey, look, this is actually something that benefits the community. And then in this recent one with the trial period, how many submitters did we have back just recently?
We had 5,000 submitters to the recent consultation.
Just in those 3 trial areas, eh?
No, that was across Auckland, so within the trial areas and other interested parties.
And that's all we got back. That's interesting. Another part that I have is what are the benefits? What will the benefits be if we go back or we actually trial the 2-week trial, trial. What benefits will we get from our community in regards to the rubbish?
So thanks for the pātai. As per the slide, we do think there's a range of benefits. I think the key thing for us is that we acknowledge that the design is a really important element of ensuring that Aucklanders can cope with a fortnightly service. So the design, we believe, is intended to respond to the feedback, to those key concerns that we've heard from people, and ensure that we can put appropriate mitigations in place to help us understand whether we can achieve the waste diversion that we expect.
Yeah, because that surprised me when I saw that slide come up and the benefits. Look, my last question is, has anybody around this table contacted you or your staff around options that they may have that would give us this benefit if the trial does not go ahead? Has anybody around this table done that?
No.
Oh, I'm not surprised. Thank you, Chair.
Kia ora, Councillor. Councillor Foley.
Kia ora, thank you, and thanks team for all your hard work. Can I just get an update of the food scraps bin? Last time we heard uptake was about 40% across Auckland. Has that changed and shifted since May last year when you last reported?
No, on average, participation is still tracking at about 40% and remains a focus for us.
And then my second question is, do we track also the recycling service? I mean, it's a great service, but I know that there are improvements. We've talked about improving the recycling service in the past. Do we track that, and are you able to comment on that? Have we seen improvements, etc.?
I'll start, Ben may like to follow on. So yes, we do track that in terms of tonnage collected across Auckland. We recently are seeing a slight decline in volumes for recycling. It's hard to attribute specifically what that is about, but we are able to monitor those volumes. And we also monitor contamination, which remains a challenge in Auckland.
Yeah, kia ora, and I have seen more ads around contamination, so that's good, more communication around that. Kia ora. I guess my last question is, we saw in the feedback a lot of commentary about commercial waste and questions from our community about, I think, concerns that this trial focuses on residential waste but not so much on commercial waste, and commercial waste makes up more of the waste in general than residential waste. Are you able to comment on that, please?
Yes, just to, I guess, remind committee that the proposed move to fortnightly is just one of our actions within the plan. So the plan has a large number of actions that are designed to target different areas, and the commercial waste aspect that you're describing sits within that total waste target reduction of 30%. So we have other programs in place seeking to address that.
Kia ora. Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Kia ora, Councillor. Thank you. Councillor Patterson-Hamlin.
Kia ora, thank you. And just want to say I appreciate the primer on it because I'm coming to this very new. And as you'll be aware, only 54 people submitted from FO, so it's clearly not a big talking point where I live, but I'm doing my best to catch up. I'm aware that there's ongoing challenges for the disabilities community around people with lower mobility, people in wheelchairs, people with poor proprioception, things like that in terms of the curbside recycling. So my question is, were the advisory panels engaged with as part of this consultation process?
No, they weren't. I guess we've been on a very tight time frame. They absolutely would be engaged if we proceeded with the trial, because we do expect that it would identify key aspects that we would welcome their contribution and advice on.
Just to clarify though, Justine, they were a key part of the waste plan. So not the trial consultation, but the waste plan. Yeah, no, that's okay, but I was just making sure that you knew that part. Councillor Gillen.
Thank you for your work on this. I was just interested in how much the trial and the consultation has costed so far and how much it's expected to cost if we do proceed with the trial.
So we received approval as part of the plan adoption in October last year for a budget of 1.7 million for the trial. Important to note that's funded from the waste levy. So that's because the trial is designed to achieve waste minimisation.
Do you know how much has been spent so far?
No, sorry, I haven't got that information. Happy to provide it as a follow-up.
Thanks, Councillor. Councillor Turner.
Thank you. I'm correct that the fortnightly trial is only, if it was to be applied, is only going on to the standard rubbish service, correct? And that leaves the non-standard services out. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
So what is the non-standard service? What's the criteria that makes you, what is the standard service? What's the criteria that makes you a standard service?
Through the chair, a standard service would be a curbside collection. The non-standard services are collected on site and are often collected more frequently, and with communal bins rather than individual.
So at one of the workshops, if I remember correctly, it was described in the zoning as in mixed house, or apartments, etc. So in reality, if we were to adopt this, the truck would still be going down the same street each week, but might collect some people and not others on some weeks. Is that correct?
Careful consideration was done in designing the trial areas and working with the contractors to try and minimise any of that kind of scenario coming.
But isn't that making the trial flawed, because you've picked an area where that conflict doesn't happen, and then if we use that trial to say, yes, let's do it to the whole of Auckland, we would expose ourselves to that conflict, correct?
I don't think it's quite that simple. The multi-unit developments, where we have a whole lot of non-standard service, is quite a complicated situation. So we would be looking, and we are developing work in that scenario. They're a different set of services than the standard curbside services, which this trial targets to get the best information possible about how we can adjust the standard curbside services.
But the standard service, a standard service person and a non-standard service people could be side by side.
Correct.
Thank you.
Hokura Member Wilson.
Tēnā koutou katoa, kia ora, Justine, kia ora Paru. Even though this is a new term on here, I can recall many a time listening and trying to get my head around this, so the questions won't be a surprise, I'm hoping. I'm concentrating by necessity in terms of iwi Māori. I note in the report here that there's almost nil participation other than those that were chosen mā tāwaka-wise, and mostly in South Auckland. So I guess it's similar to partial pātai that Councillor Gillen, if it is that a large proportion are Māori or Pacific for that reason, and that's a commonality of a thread that's coming through there about, has that been looked at, and can that be addressed rather than simply saying we'll aid, and will 1 point, whatever the figure was, 1.7 be an adequate figure, when we really haven't got a good sense of why there is that potential discontent or not engaging with Auckland Council. So I'm wondering, I'm seeing it all about services. I'm wondering in terms of equity across the board, and I am clearly in terms of iwi Māori, in terms of mana whenua, that may fall into that. What is it that's being considered would be, and you don't need to answer me now, but I'm just signalling methods, depending on how this goes in terms of optioneering, because right now I see it devoid of any sense of being able to get a view from those that either don't wish to for a whole lot of different reasons or aren't being counted, and clearly there is some money set aside, 1.7. Is that going to be enough, should this be presented, to be able to provide a sense of equity around the needs for mana whenua or iwi Māori within this space?
Thank you for the pātai, and I acknowledge I probably won't do it justice in my answer, but we have engaged with the Resilience and Infrastructure Mana Whenua Forum all through the process to develop the design prior to consultation and post-consultation. So we have sought to understand any different or unique perspectives through that process. I want to offer that reassurance. I've moved back to this slide because one of the mitigations that we're proposing in terms of how we address the concerns that have been expressed really consistently through those that identify as Māori, that responded, and non-Māori, are very consistent in terms of themes. And a key mitigation that we have there is guidance and support for those trial households. So that engagement looks on the ground at a very individual level. So the 1.7 million that you've referred to includes budget to engage community partners to provide that guidance and support. So it's very locally led guidance and support, and that enables us to understand at a finer grain what's happening in the trial area generally and what's happening more uniquely in particular parts of that trial area. Your question around, is the 1.7 million enough? That's a good question. I guess it's our best estimate with the information we have at the moment. But another thing we've got, mitigation we have on the slide there, is active monitoring and response. So if at any point we proactively identify things that we need to respond to differently, we will be looking for that through the trial.
Thank you, Justine. If I can, just to say I appreciate the kōrero, but that's a big signal that I'm giving to you in terms of our view from Haukura and iwi Māori in this place and space in order for us to vote accordingly. Kia ora.
Kia ora. Thank you, Member Wilson. Now I have 4 questions. Next up I have Councillor Sayers.
Thank you, Chair. Just reading through the paper, it strikes me that probably people are mostly worried about their own bin, right? And that it's already full for some of them in 1 week, and so what's going to happen if we go to fortnightly? And then the neighbours also going, well, their bin's full, what's going to happen? We're going to have rubbish floating around and we're going to have all these other issues. So, and you mentioned, I think, Clause 34 about the additional bin capacity. So can you just talk us through a bit more about how that's going to work, the costs around that, and if it was to be wound out regionally, how we actually would practically make that work? And then I have another question.
So the first bit, the costs involved in that, the standard business as usual costs for a bin exchange, which we expect a lot of if the trial was to go ahead, as the areas that we've targeted would look to upsize their bins where possible, is $40 for a bin exchange. So that's for a refuse bin or a recycling bin.
Yeah, so to clarify, as per the slide here, there's a range of options available. So people will be able to increase their capacity at no additional cost. To your question around what would that mean for region-wide rollout, we're not, I guess, suggesting that that would necessarily be the approach if we were to look at this region-wide, but what we are acknowledging is that there's a consistent theme through the feedback that capacity is a concern. So one of the ways for us to mitigate that is to provide additional capacity where it is needed and to actively monitor how that capacity is utilised over the trial period.
Thank you. My other question was around, do some people, I don't know the answer to this, do some people already have 2 bins? So you can upsize a bin, right, but the household's producing so much rubbish a week, they have a second bin. Is that an option that people can have right now and they're paying for that? And I guess I'm just wondering then how that works for that high volume producing rubbish household?
Yes, so as noted earlier, the high waste producer kind of line on the bottom of that graph shows the rubbish, the recycling and the food scraps capacity that a high waste producing household can have. And for the trial, an additional bin would be available. So yes, some customers do have 2 bins, and as part of this trial, we can increase that capacity if a household needs that additional capacity.
And probably just my last question might be around a cynicism about our ability to monitor and respond to illegal dumping. So can you just talk us through and give us some reassurance, like how would that physically work? Because I don't know if I think the general public may have a feeling that we're not on top of that at the moment, so what's going to be different under this trial?
Yeah, so there are issues at the moment with it. One of the key things is all the evidence we see from around the country and internationally is there is not a strong link between a change in the frequency of curbside collection services and the volume and reporting of illegal dumping. That said, the trial has been designed to have a specific field monitoring team out there, additional to the business as usual stuff that we have, so we'll be actively monitoring any change for this and looking to address that very quickly. And if we get that data to feed into any future decisions.
If I may, Richard, just one more. And that's, the public feedback has almost been overwhelming in terms of not wanting the trial. So politically that puts us in quite an awkward situation in terms of the recommendation versus what we're hearing from our constituents. So perhaps just an opportunity to reinforce why you're making that recommendation when the public feedback seems to be pointing us in a different direction.
Thank you for the pātai. So as we've outlined, I guess the evidence shows this is the most direct, so evidence from across New Zealand and elsewhere shows that this is the most effective pathway to achieving our curbside waste target reduction. The trial is designed, as we've said, to make sure that we get insight to understand how manageable it is for customers. So I think it's really key to emphasise that. We anticipate and expect that we have appropriate mitigations within the trial design, but it's only really by doing a trial that we will understand how it works for people and how we need to design for something more broadly.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Winiata.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I've just got a couple of diagrams of information. One's on, I'll go to the one on page 27 of the report, which highlights the average bin contents in figure 3. So it shows they're essentially more than half empty for an average bin. So nothing at 56%. Recycling's 10%, food scraps are 6%, garden waste is 4%, and rubbish is 25%. I just want to compare that to the diagram in the consultation documents that are on page 75 of Report A. I'd just like to understand the difference between both diagrams, which states a full bin at recycling is 14%, garden waste is 17%, food scraps are 34%, and rubbish is 39%. I recall this was presented to the Manarewa Local Board some time ago in a similar quantity, but are they conflicting lots of information, or are they from a similar report? Because I'm just trying to understand the differences between the percentages presented.
Thank you for the pātai through the chair. That I'll move back to the one that's part of here. So just to clarify, this diagram here is intended to show the composition of the rubbish bins that is currently going to landfill. So it's not intended to show that they are all full. It's showing the composition of what's within the rubbish bin and how much of that is divertible.
Okay. Is the graphic that's on page 27, which is in the report, to us looks significantly different. So this doesn't mention that there's nothing in it, which is, I'm assuming, how we're supposed to read it, but there is another diagram on page 27 of the report that states that the average rubbish bin contents are over half empty. Just trying to clarify the data that's been handed out through consultation and what we've been presented today.
Yes, so I guess two different aspects that absolutely sit together. So as I said, this one's about the composition of the bin and how much of that that is currently in the rubbish bin is able to be diverted as a resource. And the other diagram is showing the results of our bin audits, which showed that a significant number of rubbish bins are currently half full. So that suggests there is already capacity for most households within the current service.
Okay, thank you. Just another question. When it came up in conversation, I recall the other former Mararea Papakura councillor asked the question, what is the total amount of weight by percentage of illegal dumping to landfill? And the response that came back was 0.67% of waste to landfill is illegal dumping. However, the cost attached to that as of 2024 was $2.7 million. So I guess to give everyone an example, if this is all of Auckland's waste to landfill, imagine the half the size of that little camera dome there is costing Auckland $2.7 million, which there doesn't seem to be a cap on because it's a service we have to provide. If we get a phone call to collect the waste, we have to do it. Are there any actions that are happening currently to try and get on top of the illegal dumping issue that we're currently going through? Because they say that there's no relationship between the two, and there may not be, but the illegal dumping has grown significantly if we're comparing between 2022 and 2024 by 10%. If that continues to grow, any waste savings that we have by perception may not happen by volume, but that waste cost is going to go up considerably.
So thank you for the pātai and through the chair. Yes, there is other work being done. So as I mentioned previously, this is the proposed fortnightly trial is just one of the actions in the waste plan. There are actions specifically related to illegal dumping, and in the prior term of council, we worked with the Waste Political Advisory Group to present advice on our current state assessment of illegal dumping, and we are continuing that work to develop a strategy to bring back to advisory group as part of this term. We also are taking, I guess you might say, a harder line in terms of enforcement on illegal dumping, which has been really effective for us recently. So there's quite a high evidence threshold you need to meet with illegal dumping to be able to pursue the enforcement route. But in some instances recently, we have been able to do that, which sends a really important signal, I guess, to others that we are proactively working in this space, and tries to give signals to those that are our repeat offenders that it's not acceptable. I do acknowledge that illegal dumping is a challenge, and it will require continued effort on our part, but that's why it is actions in the waste plan in support of our activity.
Thanks, Councillor. I'll just do the Councillor Lee and the Mayor and then go back to you. Is that okay, Councillor Newman? Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On reflection, I think it's better that I reserve what I have to say until the commentary stage of the debate. Thank you.
Kia ora, Councillor. Thank you. Mayor Brown.
Okay, thanks for the work you're trying to do to reduce a nasty problem. I've got a couple of questions. One is, a lot of the waste in our district is construction waste, which is not necessarily ours, but it does have an impact, and we've got something to say or do about it. What suggestions have you got about reducing that? Because it's almost something that the tip operators chase. They kind of like it. So can you address something or other about that?
Thank you for the part-time, again through the chair. So what you've just described sits in the kind of left-hand side in terms of our total waste targets. Absolutely acknowledge that it's a big challenge and it's a big focus nationally because it's a significant challenge. We do have limited influence over that sector, but that doesn't mean that we're doing nothing. So we are in the process of developing a business case that supports the waste plan actions with regards to construction and demolition waste. Education's a really, really key aspect in this area, and we've seen some really encouraging results recently from communication work that we've been doing that's targeting the sector. So there's a range of things that we are doing in this space, but absolutely acknowledge it's harder for us to influence than it is in curbside collections, where of course we're the service provider.
It's possible that the building inspector side might have something to offer there. There are some forms of construction that produce a lot more waste than others do. And I can remember on one office building I recently built, the government interferers insisted that we use gibboard instead of tri-board, and gibboard produces masses of amounts of bloody throwaway because it's so cheap and easy to throw away. It's probably got some other uses too. I don't know quite where we think about those things, but I presume you're still thinking about it, just because it's not ours. And then the next set of questions is, like a lot of New Zealanders, I live in an apartment building, and I don't think we're part of your system. Or may well not be, but we tend to have huge bins downstairs that we all throw stuff into, and they get carted away pretty regularly. And there is quite good, from my experience, and there's quite good levels of recycling. Have you got anything to say about that? Are they part of what we're trying to get in that total waste thing down or not? It's just so easy. It's such a nice service that you tend not to think about the downside of the fact that it's so easy to toss stuff out. We've made it so easy. It's so convenient, our system for handling rubbish, that it's really encourages you to kind of put the stuff in there. It's sort of counterintuitive. We've made it so easy that we are increasing the waste. Is there some thinking about that? Maybe we don't make it so easy or something or other?
Yeah, really good point. The convenience of curbside services is just so much better than the next best alternative, having to take the waste somewhere. So that's really the essence of looking at the frequency of these services to change that convenience factor and using the 3-bin approach more effectively. That by reducing the convenience of the refuse side of it, the rubbish side of it, reducing how often that is available, it plays with the convenience of using the recycling and the food scrap services. So it might just push some people over the line to say, well, that's more convenient now for me to use that service because that's happened. So we're absolutely looking at the convenience, and we have made it very convenient for people.
So on the one hand, you get a pat on the back, and the other hand, you get a beat up the arse, so it's a bit hard one, isn't it? Then with regard to the way that this has gone, which is not, the kind of overwhelmingly negative responses, do you think it was wise that we mainly went after large rubbish producing areas, a large family, rather than a bit of a more mixed across the thing? Had we gone for sort of a tipped in the Deputy Mayor's Potts area, it might have not looked as like we were sort of chasing poor people quite so obviously. Do you think it possibly might have been an error in judgment? I'm just asking you.
Thank you for the partai. So a lot of work was done to identify the trial areas that provide a representative sample of Auckland. There were a range of factors that we needed to consider though, including that demographic representation, which was informed by our ability to operationalise the trials. So geographic areas that were to some degree able to be delineated more than others was also a key factor. So we did do a lot of work to make sure that we are also understanding those that are expressing genuine concern, how effective our mitigations are and what support they do need. So yeah, a lot of work was done to identify the trial areas.
Okay, fair enough. I mean, I think you've done a good job. It's probably not going to work out, but that's because it's politics. But it's a tough area, and I'm sorry that it is heading to where it's going to head to. I might well vote in favour of the bloody trial, but I'll be overrun by the others. So there you go. Cheers.
Thank you, Mayor. Councillor Newman, back to you.
Thank you, Chair, for your indulgence. I've got a couple of questions now, starting with the illegal dumping numbers. To put this in context, Justine, the figures that you sent, illegal dumping tonnes by Area 21 through to present, 2021, 1,396, this is across Auckland, 1,577, 1,737, 2,115 tonnes. That's a 51% increase over 4 years for the Auckland region. But when you look at the areas over that same period, the south, 450 tonnes, 555 tonnes, 935 tonnes, 1,127 tonnes. That's 150% in the south, which is not just all commercial, it's a mix of commercial and households. Do you think that you're on top of the illegal dumping issue given the numbers that I've just quoted?
No, not at all. As Councillor Winiata has noted, this will be an ongoing area that requires attention. One of the challenges we have is that we know people travel to illegally dump. So where the illegal dumping turns up is not necessarily where it was generated, and that's a really, really sad reality. So we're doing a lot of work with some of the southern local boards to specifically try and see how we can target this.
I think it's a mix. Now, I want to just inquire now, so the early research that informed the decisions last year and which are part of your conversation now is that there was a large family case study previously, I think facilitated by a community partner in my ward, which was, provided you with the data of a longitudinal trial of 10 families over 10 weeks, and the large family case study, your figures, that the cost of that was $60,000. Of the 10 families who have participated in this exercise, where we look at them coping over 10 weeks at fortnightly, how many of those families completed the trial?
Sorry, I don't have that information with me. I do acknowledge that some of those households did not complete the trial, so we started the trial with 10, we didn't end with 10. I do know this was covered quite a lot at committee in October last year, but I haven't got that information with me, sorry.
Okay, so of the 10, I'll give you the answer. Of the 10 families that started, 5 of the families did not complete over the 10-week period. Now we're moving from 10 families with a 50% opt-out over 10 weeks to 12,000 households over 6 months without an opt-out. Have we got the scale right?
Great partai. So the balance we were trying to strike was to make sure that we have a good representative sample of Auckland. It is why, I'll just go back to the slide, why the additional bin capacity is a really important feature of the trial. So this enables households to proactively identify themselves where they need additional capacity, and that will be provided at no cost.
That's for a trial period, but in a real-world scenario, Auckland Council ratepayers can't provide free of cost an extra bin for every Auckland household that wants it if we go to a permanent fortnightly service. So just to confirm, the benefits for those in the trial area, the rates remission you were talking about, the remission option is only available to the ratepayers, isn't it? If you are a tenant, and appreciating that a lot of the families in these trial areas are not the ratepayers, they do not receive the benefit of remission, correct?
Yes, that is correct. They don't see the benefit of the remission because we're only able to pass that on to ratepayers.
Is the extra bin available to the tenant or to, it is available to the tenant, but moving out of the trial area, trial period, it is a rate-funded scheme rubbish collection in Auckland. Is that option available for the tenant permanently if we go to a fortnightly service? You couldn't commit to that today, could you?
No, and we don't want to give any impression that we are. The key thing here is that the trial will give us data and insight into how successfully households cope or not, and that would inform further advice to committee.
And my final question at this point, in the have your say, there were significant concerns that were raised from our local, Manarewa local board area in terms of the contracted key partner and the messaging that was provided to the public from that key partner, wasn't it? And I think appreciating the interventions that you took to mitigate the messaging to ensure that there was correct information provided, but how much of those who participated in the Have Your Say from that particular local board area would have received the information which was in fact wrong? For example, that that we can just move this to another trial location. Do you have any estimate on numbers there, or just basically we have to accept what we've got, noting that it wasn't a perfect consultation, shall we say?
I thank you for the part. I know I can't estimate numbers.
Kia ora. Councillor Filipaina.
Tēnā koe hea mana. Justine, I got a question of clarification first. And I asked the pātai earlier around the 78%. And that 78% from my reading was from the trial areas, but you said no, that was across Auckland. Can you clarify, because in the report, it was from the 3 trial areas. That's the 5,000, where is it? 5,086 or 5,051 was from the trial areas?
No, so we received just over 5,000 submissions across the consultation overall, and the graphs that are on the slide here show the difference in results between the trial areas and all submissions and feedback. So the trial areas had 80% do not support, or across all submissions it was 78%.
Okay. Can I also, if you have a look at attachment A, can I still confirm that, and this attachment A was fortnightly rubbish collections, evidence, impacts and options to support households, that the evidence includes the following: it is the best option to reduce waste from curbside collections to landfill, included related greenhouse gas emissions. Is that still the case now?
Yes.
It is, and I just want one more. I just wanted to make sure that this clarification is also, and that's number 6 of that same report. The food scraps collection service was rolled out to 475,000 households across the region in 2023. As of August 2024, 28,000 tonnes of food scraps, they were diverted. Okay, and this particular item is about a trial. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Herman.
Kia ora. I don't have any more questions. I just want to check on a couple of things, and it's just for the 18 councils that are successfully doing fortnightly now. I think most of them, I mean, Christchurch, am I right, has had fortnightly for 15 years, but they don't actually even allow a bigger bin. They only have the standard size. Is that correct? I guess my question is more around the options we were providing or going to provide or potentially provide are far greater than the councils who do have the service already. I think Christchurch only allows the 120 bin, they don't allow any bigger.
Yes, so there's quite a lot of information in Appendix 1 of Attachment 1, which speaks to the different bin capacity that is available at different local authorities across New Zealand. Our understanding is that the larger bin is not available in Christchurch because there are private services that can meet that need. Yeah.
Cool. And the other question was just, and I know we've talked, Katie's gone through it, so that's great, but just to be clear, we're required by the law under successive governments to have a waste minimisation plan, and also we're required to reduce our waste. Like, this isn't just some fandango idea that you guys came up with to upset anyone. This is literally, we're required to do this.
Yes, that is right. So we're required to review our waste minimisation plan every 6 years, and the plan that we're operating under at the moment was adopted in October 24.
And the last question, that the hard or the conflicting issue that we've come up with this time is, I think, is that correct? It was about 67% of Aucklanders supported the plan and the targets to reduce waste, but then when we get to the how, that's when the consultation changes. Is that right?
Yes, that is correct.
Thank you. Councillor Turner, sorry.
Thank you, just Mr. Chair. Clarification on what you just said. The waste minimisation is to landfill. That's the measure. Is that not correct? Rather than just waste minimisation. It's waste minimisation to landfill. So if you were putting it in an incinerator, or like what I'm trying to do there, that it's, the measure is to landfill. Because we just keep talking about curbside waste as well, which is another partial measure, correct?
Yeah, the Waste Minimisation Act talks about promoting and achieving waste minimisation, and that's what we can spend the levy that is on landfill disposal to achieve.
Thank you. Oh, damn it, I kicked off 3 more. Sorry, guys. Councillor Watson.
You've been sitting back trying to absorb all this rather complex balancing act, and certainly don't want to discourage the great progress that we've made in recent years with waste minimisation. So I'm just, it might be a very stupid question to ask, but I'll ask it anyway. In terms of our progress in waste minimisation, it's not affected if bins are half empty then, is it? You know, it's, they've reduced the waste, but so if a bin's half empty on a collection date, it doesn't really matter in terms of if the people are then putting away their food scraps and all the rest of it, they're doing those other behaviours. So in terms of behaviour, that's not a negative, is it?
No, it's not a negative. I would note that through the recent rates-funded rubbish rollout, we've seen a significant portion of Aucklanders choose a lower capacity bin as part of that rollout. We certainly encourage that where people feel that they can cope with that. I'd just note, I guess, back to this slide here, that it's the diversion opportunity that we are seeking to, I suppose, facilitate through the trial. So the items within the waste that are actually a resource is what we're really seeking to target.
So that leads me to a question in respect of the educative function that's required here right across Auckland, and we all know trying to communicate with Aucklanders is very challenging, and there's no real kind of rhyme or reason to that. It can be as difficult in one part as it is another. So I guess, given what's happened overseas or internationally, and I know you've said that this is following the practice of what's occurred in other councils here, but if we take a sort of broader comparator, to what extent has that educative function been the more the key to realising our goals than perhaps the frequency of collection or whatever? So the ability to get through to people and the behaviour where it's obviously working in some parts but not other parts, and that, you know, that's entirely predictable. So to what extent, refreshed or different kind of approach in terms of communicating with people could achieve the same goals is what I'm really asking.
I probably have a couple of responses to that. One is it's really important to acknowledge that we have active campaigns all the time to support people's understanding of our waste minimisation goals and how they can contribute, and that is levy-funded activity. So I guess, again, coming back to this slide, that shows that communication alone is not enough for us to achieve the potential that we believe is there in terms of diversion. But I'd also like to acknowledge that we are working all the time to understand how effective our marketing campaigns are, how effective our communication campaigns are, and working actively with the comms team to review and refine that.
Sorry, final question, and I imagine going to schools is part of that, or primary and secondary?
Absolutely. So that's where our community partners are really, really powerful in terms of engaging locally and influencing the younger generation.
Yeah, because they're obviously the drivers of their parents often too. Yeah.
Kia ora, Councillor. Councillor Ferry.
Kia ora, thanks. Do you mind just going back to the timeline slide for a second, please? Yeah, that one there. So I just wanted to clarify, so in the 2012, the 2018 and the 2024 one, there was a commitment to implement fortnightly collections, is that correct?
In the 2024 plan, there was a commitment to propose a trial.
Okay. Though we've been on a trajectory towards fortnightly for quite a while, is that a fair thing to say?
Yes, since 2012.
Yeah, okay. And that's 13, nearly 14 years ago. Okay. And then, so, I mean, I guess this is the thing, is if we're not going forward with the trial, then that advice that needs to come back to us about how we meet our commitments, I think is going to be really important. If there were any areas where people did want to trial, to do a trial of fortnightly, is that something that potentially could be accommodated?
We will need to do more work on that. The challenge with an opt-in is that it's very difficult to manage that practically, to operationalise a trial that's opt-in. It also wouldn't necessarily give us a demographic representation of Auckland. So then it would be challenging to evaluate meaningfully and understand how effective that would be across the region.
Okay. And so with the other, you had the 18 councils up there before that had shifted to fortnightly. Is that something that potentially, in terms of that next round of advice, we could have? I guess the thing is, we're sort of in this situation here where I think the evidence tells us one thing, but the social licence is something else, right? And so I guess I'm wondering if more information around the experiences of these 18 councils could be useful in some of our conversations with the community about gaining the social licence. Is that something potentially you could come back with some more advice about as well?
Yes, we could.
Great, thank you.
Cool, thank you. Councillor Fletcher.
I'm being a little bit naughty here, please indulge me. And Peril will know that I'm being very consistent, but I think one of the reasons why we have failed to get the social licence on this is just the appalling, and I say this as a grandmother of 7, but the use of human nappies is a very big part, I suspect, of the 39% of the waste. Can you confirm that?
I don't think we have data to quantify how much of the 39% is nappies.
No, we can't tell you exactly how much is nappies, but it is a very problematic waste stream.
it is more than a problematic waste stream. It's a problem. It's a problem for water care. It's a problem for a lot of organisations. I do think, I'm not sure which way this is going to go today, but in whatever scenario, we've just really fundamentally got to find a way, and I don't know whether there is a pathway internationally, but it is the norm now to use, unfortunately, disposable nappies. So if you take in the life of the average 2-year-old, you tend to take them off nappies around 2, on the basis that they're going to use 4 a day over 24 months. That's around about 3,000 nappies. And I had the great pleasure of having my daughter stay with me with her 4 children recently while their bathroom had to be done and they couldn't occupy the house. And I had not had a problem with my red bin until they came to stay, and I realised that a lot of that was nappies. And so we're having this great philosophical debate. We can see the evidence that we've actually got to really move in one direction. But, and I'm very aware that for parents that are juggling multiple jobs to pay their rates, they are under a lot of pressure. And it has become the social norm for disposable nappies to be used. I mean, you've also got disposable nappies in the area of rest homes and so forth as well. But the specific issue that I'm interested in at some point is what we can do as a council to actually find a way that's, because at the moment that's going to landfill. Is there any research that's been done that it could be separated out, or whether that there be some other disposal form? Because if you were to ask me when my grandchildren are there, yes, I want a weekly service because it smells, but that is largely this human waste. And there's got to be a better way. And I know it's not a particularly pleasant subject to talk about, but we need to talk about it because that is the driver for a lot of the problem that we have. So I'd be interested in any commentary you can give us on what research you're doing, what can be done, whether we can identify what percentage, because I think there is a behaviour change that is necessary here, but we've got to make it easier.
Thank you for the pātai, and I'll hand to Ben, who I'm sure will like to follow up. I guess just a couple of points that I wanted to make and absolutely acknowledge your commentary, and it is a real challenge. I guess in most instances, it is a challenge for a finite period of time. So I guess if kind of bringing it back to the trial just for a moment, the key thing is that is why we have recognised that some households are high waste producers, and of course the trial's a finite period. So it may well be that for that trial period they have additional requirements, so that is why we're seeking to meet those requirements for them. The other point I just wanted to make is a couple of examples of things. So we have a waste-free parenting program, which is run by our community partners.
I'm familiar. Yeah, I'm familiar with that. But I don't think that's taken off as much as it could have. Yeah.
Yes, so I acknowledge that, and I was just going to mention that through our Waste Minimisation Innovation Fund, we've also had prior recipients who are doing work in this space to understand what kind of a program would actually help if the products were provided to households. So the cost element of washable is often a barrier for households. So there is innovation happening. Absolutely acknowledge it's a big challenge. So not suggesting that we've got all the answers at all, but there is work happening in this space.
Thank you. As I said, it was an indulgence, but it's a particular concern of mine. So keen that we do further work on it.
Kia ora, Councillor. And I think, yeah, definitely that bit of work needs to come back to any advice going forward. I think even if there are ways through the waste plan to come up with a way forward, because we used reusable nappies, but there's a couple $100 upfront cost, but it's probably saved us over $3,000 over that time. So the investment, I don't know if it's really a council initiative, but actually saves a lot of money, but you need that couple $100 at the beginning, which is hard for many families. So I don't like to offer it as promoting, because it's not, but it once you're used to it, it's easy, but not for everyone. Councillor Gillen.
Thank you. My question might be a legal one, so and apologies if this has already been asked, but if the committee today confirms what has been put in front of us by the chair to not approve the fortnightly collection trial, that doesn't actually prevent fortnightly coming back. Well, it would still technically be part of the policy. So when you come back to us later on, fortnightly could still be in the mix. Is that right?
I'll speak to the chair's recommendations and, in response, I guess. So yes, it is the current proposal. So alternatives will be assessed against fortnightly to present options, implications, and a recommendation to committee for subsequent consideration.
Okay. Is this committee able to, at this point, definitively support weekly and request staff to come back with amendments to the waste minimisation plan to reflect that?
I think we did have that answer.
I'd like to hear from the...
Yep, that's what I was saying.
So our advice is that our strong advice would be that if the committee wants to do that, that it would be best to request that staff report back with advice and options on an amendment to the waste plan to provide for the continuation of a weekly service, rather than making that firm commitment here today, so that the committee can have advice on the implications of that for the waste plan and have all of that information before you, so that you're making a fully informed decision rather than making that decision today.
What about an in-principle decision?
I think as long as any in-principle decision was subject to the receipt of further advice from staff, so that you can consider all of the relevant matters that you need to consider in terms of the waste plan.
Okay, thank you.
Kia ora, Councillor. That's the end of Councillor Berry. Question.
Thank you. I have a follow-up question then, because of the special consultative procedure, my understanding was that we couldn't make an amendment to the plan without consultation. So if we made an in-principle decision today, that to me is going a step beyond, that is a step we would make in response to consultation, not necessarily ahead of consultation. Is that?
Yes. Yeah. So any decision to amend the waste plan would need to be done following consultation using the special consultative procedure.
Yeah.
If the committee wanted to today to make an in-principle decision subject to staff advice and, procedural requirements relating to the amendment of the waste plan to give a political direction to staff, it could do that. But there does need to be that process followed for the amendment to the plan.
And we haven't actually been given any advice in the report about taking that move today.
That's right. The advice today is about the fortnight,
just about the trial
for the fortnightly collection.
Right. Thank you.
And yeah, I just wanted I should have been clear at the beginning. These recs have been written based on all the feedback I've got, but based on what we can legally do, based on the fact that everything needs to come with advice to then give just ability for us to make decisions on alternatives or amendments to the waste plan, and also acknowledging there's 7 new members to this committee this time, which may have not had all the details. So all of that can come back, but that's why this is open to bring all that back to us, because today's decision is only on the trial. Deputy Mayor, did you have?
I think you summarised and helped me out here, because I think we were sort of moving into another sphere of changing the plan as opposed to the decision you're asking us today. And I was just trying to make sure we weren't trying to do too much at one go. So
if we go into changing the plan, we'll probably have to have a whole nother round of 20 questions, I guess, but yeah.
I will leave.
There are no more questions, so I'll just get you all to step back from the table. Thank you very much. Is that correct?
Comments.
Yeah, so we'll go to comments. So thank you all for the questions and the feedback. Just want to acknowledge once again the staff who have been taking long direction, as people have mentioned, from 2012 and before. We are required to reduce our waste. We should want to. We should all see it as a responsibility for all of us to reduce waste to landfill, to reduce the number of landfills. We do hear a lot of public feedback to this committee and others over the years to not have more landfills around, particularly our rural areas, because that's about the only place they can go now. And the fact that the extension to some of those landfills are creating a lot of smells for those communities. Those smells come from things like food scraps. There are 18 councils that do this. It's not some sort of brand spanking new thing. We do have a role to lead on this. We should be and are leaders, but I know that some people have heard from their communities quite strongly, even before this, that the move to fortnightly, despite happening around the country, is a move too far, and some people have obviously campaigned and different and other things on fortnightly. So my job is to lead, but it's also to listen. And I think listening to my colleagues, I have had a majority of this committee come to me saying they do not support the trial. I think it's appropriate that these chairs recs were put forward in consultation with the mayor, consultation with staff and legal, and this does open up all those decisions that have been discussed today. It does acknowledge that this move does delay. We have to tell the public that this is delaying our waste reduction. It is putting more waste into landfills for ongoing time, and depending on what changes happen through the waste minimisation plan, if there are any, we have to be honest about that too. So I understand, I have had a feedback from a couple of committee members since we put those chairs recs out, disappointed that we're not going there. I think, in my opinion, if we hadn't had a global pandemic, we may have been okay. Other areas rolled out food scraps and fortnightly and the changes all at the same time, so people could understand, okay, we've got this additional space for waste, I'm moving that food scraps to there, I understand how it can be fortnightly. My sister moved to Taranaki last year, and the change, she said it took about a month to be like, okay, we need to put it out these days, and they've got a calendar on their fridge, etc., etc. So it is not easy for every family to do that, acknowledge that. But these resolutions do take us forward in a methodical way to make sure we are being honest to the 67% of people who submitted to the waste plan saying they support our targets and support the waste, but then this comes back to us with good advice about what needs to change, and if we need to go up to consultation, because this is a statutory document, it gives everyone the opportunity to understand what that means, good or bad, for or against, especially the new 7 members around this table, and also we will need to go to mana whenua and local boards to make sure they understand the implications as well. So I hope that we can, we're getting to the end of the day, I hope that we can support these resolutions, because I do believe they get everything that most people have been asking and feeding back to me over time. And I did ask for feedback on these resolutions over the weekend, and I didn't receive any different recs after that, so hopefully we can have that forward. We have Councillor Lee. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I support your recommendations, and thank you for listening to the concerns of elected members and, of course, the public, which is very important. Yeah, I have some questions about the logic of the plan, whether reducing curbside collections will actually reduce the quantum of rubbish itself, but it's probably not the appropriate time to discuss that. We've moved long past that. The situation here is how to respond to the results of the consultation, and your recommendations, I believe, are the correct one. We had a brief discussion about the recent election and a forthcoming one. It's important for us to act as if democracy doesn't end with elections, with the last votes that are counted, but it's something we must continue on through the work of this council. One could imagine what the elected members' reaction would be if 78% of them voted for or against a certain policy, and that was ignored. And I would say that the response from the public would not be particularly positive if we were to carry on in a predetermined way and ignore the results of a consultation that we ourselves initiated. Not only that would that undermine the credibility of the very useful tool of public consultation, but undermine the credibility of Auckland Council. In terms of a staff reporting, I would raise the question again that we need to ensure some sort of template where the decision-making requirements, the must-do requirements of the Local Government Act are a part of every report when it comes to major decisions like this. So I think that's enough from me. I support. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lee. I appreciate that. Thanks a lot. Councillor Gillen.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. I've got a potential amendment, but I'm happy if you'd like to actually include it in. I have sent it through as an addition to, would be an additional G, I think that's the right letter. To confirm in principle support for a permanent region-wide weekly curbside general rubbish collection subject to staff reporting back on consequential amendments to the waste minimisation plan, which, as we just heard, should be legally viable. And so I'm happy if you wanted to include that. Otherwise, I'm happy to move it as an amendment.
I mean, I'm not going to add it after all we've just spoken about. You're asking us to make a decision with no advice, to wait for advice.
No, it says subject to staff reporting back, but it's an in principle position, because otherwise all we're doing is saying no to the trial. We're not actually giving any indication to the public that that they can stand relieved that we're not considering the fortnightly, that we are looking at other options, and that it's in principle support for weekly.
While you're thinking about it, can I ask a question?
Hang on. There's a question on the amendment to the... yes. You have a seconder for that, Councillor. So, Councillor Winiata, second.
Sorry, I was just checking. So, are you saying never, ever, ever?
Subject to the advice that they'll come back with. This would be confirming, continuing with weekly and supporting permanent weekly collection.
So because I am with the Chair's Rex, and I'm just trying to get what you're really saying here, noting that we've been on a trajectory since 2012. So you're saying we're no longer on that trajectory with no advice? Oh, no, you say subject back staff reporting.
I'm happy to speak to it if we're ready for
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
I think you'd already spoken to it.
No, I actually asked if you would like to include it, otherwise I was happy to move it. We now got the seconder, so I am happy to speak to it. I was just replying to the question that you'd allowed.
Okay. Are there questions of the mover before Councillor Ferry?
Yeah, I do have a question about how you square in principle support with the fact that we don't have advice, and you're asking for advice after we resolve in principle support. That seems to me unwise. I would be much more comfortable if we had something that said seek support for a shift 2 or whatever, but to say, to make a decision today with even adding in principle.
I think there might be debating.
Sorry.
Do you want to just
it
ask
was
the
a question.
Yeah.
But then I started to debate, you're right.
Okay. We'll move back to the mover to speak to the amendment.
Thank you. Well, just in response to that, I mean, we did just receive legal advice that it is fine to have in principle, and so I have written this out in that way. I'm happy at some point if we want to drop the word permanent, if that's going to be a sticking point. But otherwise, I think this is a really important step to make. I mean, I think many of us received a lot of feedback during the election campaign and during the consultation period for the fortnightly trials that there is a lot of concern out there about moving to fortnightly. And we've heard some of those things that we mentioned today, like the nappies. I mean, there's adult nappies as well. Wet wipes. I mean, Watercare don't want wet wipes put down the pipes. Where they're going to go, they need to go into the bins. We've had changes to the recycling, what's allowed in the recycle bin in 2024, so you can no longer put in your Tetra Packs, your yogurt pots, aerosol cans, any containers that are over 4 litres, including like water bottles of 5 litres. You're not supposed to put all those in. I know a lot of people still do. You're not supposed to put all those things in, all the lids, etc. We'd have, many of us have local resource centres that are happy to take things and repurpose them and that. I don't think they've got the capacity to cope with every single household dropping off their rubbish to them. We're just not at a state where we can actually do that yet. We've also, I actually don't think we should be even looking and considering fortnightly until we've got perhaps a street collection for soft plastics. Soft plastics, which should actually, we need to address that at the manufacturing level really. But soft plastics make up a huge amount of what goes into our rubbish bins. We should really be looking at a curbside collection for those. The food scraps collection, I wasn't around at the time, but we should have been going with is it the FOGO system where you include the green waste in there as well. Many cities have that, including Australia, and that Rotorua and Christchurch have done that. We don't have a rates rebate or reward system for people that voluntarily reduce their household waste. We don't have recycling targets for people. We don't have any benefits for people that compost at home. So there's all sorts of things that we can do to reduce waste, but going to fortnightly, whether it's a trial, permanent, whatever, I think that's just is the wrong move to make at this point. Yeah, I think that's enough said. We all know the arguments here. One last one is that I don't think many people realise that you can't put ice cream container lids, margarine lids in there as well into the rubbish. So look, there's just a lot of reason at this point where I think the public would be happy for us to make an in-principle support for weekly, but of course it's subject to the advice that we get back next year on that. Thank you.
Are there anyone who'd like to speak to the amendment? Councillor Turner.
On the back of what Councillor Gillen has said, I agree with trying to cement in some sort of permanency to the weekly rubbish collection. It's been a long time since I had anything to do with babies, but when I did, I found they pooped a lot. And taking away the nappies doesn't fix that. And the nappies make it convenient for the family. Convenience is what makes, first world country. And I look at all the figures up there, if we're going to have this capacity of 2 million homes, even if we all halved our waste, we'd still have more waste. And then I learn, and I'm get it reinforced, that the measure we're trying to achieve is only at landfill. And then when I sit in water care meetings, I find we've got another big problem there with the solid wastes. And there is a potential they could be incinerated. And then we could mix our other waste with it. And, you know, it's just, it doesn't mean that we don't have to try to save or reduce waste, but there's no such thing as zero waste. I think we're missing the big picture. I think we're missing the common sense of it. We're not here to stop people from giving us rubbish. We're here to deal with it in the most appropriate ways. And I think we should keep focused on that. So I'll be supporting this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak to? Councillor Henderson.
Thank you, Chair. Finding this a bit difficult because I'm trying to parse what it's actually saying. And I suggest it might need to have been workshopped a little bit more, frankly. It appears to say we're going to make a decision, be it in principle or not, and then retrospectively ask for advice on the call we've already made. That's usually backwards to how council decisions work. And I also say with the statutory element to this, I'm not entirely comfortable with it. I'll be listening to the rest of the debate, and I hope there is more debate because I haven't decided what I'm doing yet. But yeah, if someone can help fill me in, that'd make sense. To make it make sense, that'd be great. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Member Wilson.
I am singularly confused about this whole amendment, to be fair, given that we've sat here and talked at some length that everyone seemed to have their say. I agree absolutely with Councillor Henderson there. Look, I'm thinking to myself, who are we against here? Is it ourselves or as Auckland Council, as councillors, as member of Haukura? Because it seems like it is, and it's a strange concept for me too. The hard-working staff that are sitting there to do the job that we're asking them to do, we're providing them a window of opportunity to go away and consider, but instead we'd rather confirm in principle. I don't know, is there a trust issue there? I can't get my head around it, except, and I don't need, I know what in principle means, especially as an iwi mana whenua representative. So my own view of the world is, what are we doing? We've all had our say about this, and I thought that we were almost there. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And we have our staff here who we expect to produce something that will aid us and drive us forward, but we want you to do it in a specific way. Makes no sense to me, Mr. Chair. I agree absolutely with all the matters that have been put forward and the opinions that we express. Kia ora.
Kia ora, Mayor Wilson. Thank you. Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, John, I think it's crazy. It's not potentially written as well as it could be, but I think your intent, I get what your intent is. You know, if your intent is to say, until we have a greater level of ability to be better with our rubbish, so we don't need to put it all in landfill, unless there are until there are other methods, other nappy methods, other things, we need to stick with weekly, all right? My only thing is, my heart tells me I don't want to do that forever and a day. I don't want to say never, ever, but until we have better options for some of the things that you've mentioned, I think that is the intent. But that's what I think your recommendations meant. Where I'm confused on this one is, are you stopping, are you actually saying never? Or are you saying until? In fact, it's just really badly written. I get your intent. I totally support your intent, which I think is what what the chair was trying to do in the first place. But my long-term vision for us as a city is to reduce landfill and to have all the necessary elements we need to help that. We're not there yet, so I am supporting weekly. I'm also supporting no trial because that's what the people said. but I'm just still confused about what you mean. So I just might abstain from your one, and because it's just not clear to me. But that's where I'm sitting at the moment, unless I can be convinced anything else.
Kia ora, Deputy Mayor. Thank you. Councillor Lee.
So I support the amendment and applaud it actually, because in terms of your recommendation, E, it's totally congruent with that. And given the concerns out there in the community, which is the concerns have spread across the sea to Waiheke Island. This morning on the bus, a gentleman called out to me, Mike, my rubbish wasn't collected yesterday. Have they stopped this? Have they started the fortnightly collection already? And I was able to reassure him. So the public needs some direction here. Further advice has been sought. We've heard from management in a marathon session what their views are. Management are very clear on proceeding. However, the public is not. And we have to decide whether we support the public or management in this particular case. And in my view, in a proper democracy, the wishes of the public so decisively expressed are sovereign. And bear in mind, we're going out with a 7.9% rates increase and consulting on it. And at the same time, we've been recommended and advised to remove a service which has been fundamental to local government going back, how long? Decades and decades and decades. So the rates go up and the service has been advised to be taken away. That's unacceptable to the public, and I suspect it's unacceptable to the public's elected members. So I support this. Thank you.
Kia ora, Councillor. Councillor Filipaina.
Tēnā koe he mana. I got a question on clarification, if that's okay, because, and that's from our legal advice I want to get, because what we've got here currently is this is around a trial. What we have by way of amendment and by way of addition is totally different to what the agenda item we are discussing, and whether that is legally allowed, whether it be under the Local Government Act or even our standing orders. So I don't know whether I need to get Katie to end up finding out, because we're discussing, this agenda item is on specifically the trial or a trial. And we're now at a discussion with this amendment by way of addition is saying that we, in principle, are saying just stick with weekly, collection. I just want to make sure that this amendment by way of addition is actually legally binding.
In the middle of debate, I'm a bit worried to bring stuff in, and I think the advice was it's not the right practice to do it without advice, but legally we can make whatever decision we want, I guess. Yep. But with the in principle there. But if you, I'm not that keen to bring Katie into the debate. If that's
Chair, I'll wait for further, because if we find out, then hopefully this gets rescinded. If we find out that it doesn't in fact end up being legal, because it's totally different. So look, I'll put myself on the speaking list.
Okay.
A point of order to that, because I think Councillor Filipina makes an excellent point, and I just wanted to seek advice on it. Is there anything in the standing orders relating to the scope of the initial report and the initial motion versus when does an amendment go so far outside of that it's not
I might
not appropriate? Could I just ask staff if they've
Yeah,
got it?
I'm
I'm trying
gonna
to find it myself. Yeah.
Even though it's in the middle of debate, I'm going to adjourn for 5 minutes because I don't. Yeah.